From Washington, this is the HPS Macrocast with Hamilton Place Strategies and Markets Policy Partners.
Good morning. It's Friday, April 30th. You're listening to the Macrocast. Tony Fratto here. We have John Fagan, Brendan Walsh from Markets Policy Partners, and Bryan DeAngelis, my colleague from Hamilton Place Strategies, with us this week. Bryan, we have the big speech by President Biden, and we don't call it a State of the Union address because the tradition is, I've been through this I've been through this before. It's not a State of the Union address in the first year because you're really talking about what you're going to do in the future, and you weren't in control for the things in the past. So that's sort of the judgment of it, and it's whatever Congress calls it at the end of the day.
It's true, although I would say not in title, but this year more than any other year, right? It truly was what is the state of our union? We're coming out of a pandemic. We're in this sort of transition period where I think we're up to half of Americans have at least one shot now, and the economy's starting to reopen. So I'm with you. I'm always skeptical that presidents can take too much credit, but we are 220 or so vaccines, 220 million vaccines. I think in arms, we're starting to see things turn around, and Biden was laying out both a little bit of what he has done in the first 100 days, another arbitrary number, a little bit in my opinion, but where we're going next. And we had heard about the American Jobs Plan. Now we started to get a sense of the American Families Plan. A lot of action. I've been describing it as Biden is going to keep his foot on the gas and really try to not let a good crisis go to waste and see how much he can get done in the next year, in the next 2 years, give Republicans kind of a lot to choose from, both in terms of where do they want to get on board and what do they want to try to fight. And I think by flooding the zone a little bit, he's going to be able to move at least the infrastructure part of this and make some good progress, I think, on the Families Plan. And I was saying to the guys the other day, I think worst case scenario, the Families Plan becomes your 2022 campaign agenda if they don't get it done this fall.
Is it your guess that, though, if you had to estimate like how much of each of the two piece. Actually, do you have a sense on sequencing and how much? Like if you had to put your best guess on it, Bryan?
Yeah, I would say definitely infrastructure first. I think I do think he split them on purpose to try to really move infrastructure. I think he sees more of a bipartisan support there. Bipartisan in any way you want to define it. I think in terms of voters supporting it. And I think you saw Trump and part of the Republican base really embrace infrastructure. It was a top 5 issue for both presidential candidates last cycle. Like, this is something both parties are interested in. So I do think they move infrastructure. I think it is not the full package, but probably 75% of it. And I think the goal will be by August recess. I think reality is probably the fall.
For just the
just infrastructure. That's right. Yep. The Families Plan, I think we're looking at this late fall, this winter, and I would love to see it happen. I'm a bit more skeptical it actually gets done. I think it'll be harder to find bipartisan support on that, and I think it'll be very hard to. And I'm very curious what you guys have to say about this too, because I think spending whatever the final number is, 1.5 trillion on infrastructure at a time when we are starting to see at least media concern about inflation risks. Can we then do another couple trillion on top of that later this fall? It starts to seem like the messaging will turn against Democrats a little bit at that point.
Well, the thing I'd say, and John and Brendan, definitely weigh in on this too. But the difference between the couple $1 trillion that we poured into the economy, actually multi-trillion dollars. If we go back from the period of December to present time, right? Multi-trillions of dollars being poured into the economy, directly into consumption very quickly, as short period of time is why, and one of the reasons, why the Fed is only concerned about inflation as a sort of a temporary phenomenon here is, a lot of money right away, a lot of pent up demand that's going to come right away. The two bills we're talking about, they have two features to them. One is that they're spread over multiple years, so it's not
such an important point
spent in 1 year. And second, they've got tax increases in them, which are contractionary and should subtract from growth and inflationary pressures.
March personal income was up 21.1%. It's because half of America got a $1,400 pay check.
Like you just say that, right? 21% savings, right? Up 21%. It's like crazy.
Yeah,
huge.
And that was what it was intended for. We approved $1 trillion and we sent it out. This is totally different. This is over the course of 10 years, and you're totally right. I don't think we get the tax raises that were originally presented this week, but we will get some sort of higher taxes across corporate and individual.
And one of the points about infrastructure is not just that it's spent over 10 years, that the number of shovel-ready projects, from what we understand, having talked with industry specialists and experts, is that it's really hard to get that money into projects that are ready to go. There are a lot of moving parts in the translation from Congress passing it to actually it finding its way into real spending that makes a difference to the economy at a time when, U.S. infrastructure has been kind of dead in the water for a long period of time. The surface infrastructure bill needs to get re-upped. So we know how to fix potholes. But a lot of the other stuff that the Biden administration is focused on for its infrastructure package, those just aren't ready to go. And there are so many different approvals and things that need to be done first. Just to go back to something you said earlier, Bryan, about the bipartisanship, there is bipartisan support, certainly for the meat and potatoes kind of old style infrastructure. But do you think that ultimately this is just another reconciliation vote, and the Biden administration is more or less just negotiating with Joe Manchin, Senator Manchin, and some of the moderates in the House?
Yeah, more likely than not. If I was a betting man, I'd have to say that's true. But I think unlike what we saw under Trump, it is not toxic to work with this president. I believe Shelley Moore, Capito, and Biden's efforts here to look at two different bills. They're way off, right? $2 trillion, and I think it was $600 billion from Senate Republicans. So that's a big gap. And I lived through the like Chris Dodd, Bob Corker days of when we thought we'd have a Republican on Dodd-Frank and got nowhere. But I think Biden will try, and I think those in his circle want him to try to get 60 votes on at least the traditional infrastructure package.
One of the things that there are a couple things that make bipartisanship challenging on it, right? Again, if we're only talking about traditional. If we were only talking about traditional surface transportation kinds of things, and even things like broadband, digital, electricity grid, maybe even water, clean water. That may even be the kinds of things that you could probably get a lot of agreement on. It's the other things on assisting the elderly and without debating the merits of that. It's pretty clear that if you did just focus on those, like the sort of first order stretch on after you probably get a lot of agreement on it. But that's one area that's going to make getting bipartisan agreement really difficult. The other part is on the tax side, obviously, and Republicans see the Tax Cut and Jobs Act, TCJA, as their
big win, right?
Yeah, big win, primary achievement of their majority ship during the Trump administration, and they're not going to abandon that. It's going to have a very, very hard time finding even one or two Republicans who want to abandon that tax policy. They think those changes were big and significant and ought to be retained. And so I think that's probably the bigger challenge. And I think in some of these states you're going to have some Democrats who have a hard time with some of the tax increases, even some of the ones that I know to most people sound good, like the overseas operations of American firms, and this huge doubling of the capital gains rate on quote unquote millionaires. There's a lot of complexity to those things, that opponents will have. I raised my hand as one of the opponents on those two things, but there are good arguments out there that I think some Democrats are going to have a hard time supporting as well.
I do think Democrats are debating even internally among the party. Do we have to pay for this? Like I think Democrats are ready to do it without the pay for. So this will be an interesting thing to watch in the negotiations, because
it's a big question about the motivation on this, right? Because there's all kinds of motivations. I mean, do you want to, first of all, do you have to do it? Like, why do you have to go pay for something that you are saying is going to have a, big increase in productivity and growth? Like so why do you have to pay for this if it's going to, we talk, just tax cuts pay for themselves, just spending pay for themselves. Sometimes, you can make.
And that the private sector would love to be able to invest in.
Very much so. Right. Yeah. Or do you want to do it because, you can, you think that the previous, the tax policy is unfair in some way. We hear this a lot, President Biden says over and over, pay your fair share. We had Megan Green on last week, talking about as to help alleviate income inequality, so a larger societal, public policy goal that isn't a question of fairness. It's just a question of trying to fix inequities in the distribution of income across society, because there are problems of unequal distribution of money.
Yeah. But I'm really interested in seeing how wedded Biden is to this. I think his team wanted to do it. I think the reason you put out a pay for is to not be attacked for not paying for it, right? It's sort of politics 101 on that front. But if Republicans somehow come to him and say, we can do 1.5, but without these tax cuts, I think he takes that deal.
Yeah, why wouldn't you?
Right.
I think it would help them if they would started with the better arguments on growth and productivity instead of must pay for. And I think they felt like, well, look, they are protected now, whatever happens, right? So if you've got big deficits in 2022, 2023, and people are saying those, tax and spend Biden, he said, I presented, a fully paid for plan, and so he can inoculate himself a little bit on that.
Yeah, a lot of this was driven by the NEC. Elected officials were kind of surprised about how much the original proposal had in taxes, and apparently a lot of it was driven by the NEC, who was worried about future inflation and deficits.
Right. Yeah. Well, I think there are there are macro implications to this as we go forward. I mean, whether it's in those pieces, and whatever is going to happen with tax policy. There's a lot there, and we're going to have to keep an eye on this as we go. But it was good. I will say it was just in terms of the color and context of the address, It's a
little weird seeing it that empty, but
yeah, you've been in that room,
I've been in that room. I've watched others down there.
It was bizarre. I mean, like, we're used to it is usually a jam-packed affair, not just in the room, but outside the room,
outside, right?
Hall, and yeah, it's raucous, and it wasn't raucous, but I didn't mind it, as a viewer from my couch.
No.
I feel like they miss an opportunity to show America that if you get vaccinated, you could go into a room with other vaccinated people and not wear a mask.
Brendan, I thought the same thing. I thought that was like it was an opportunity to say, for them to go.
Yeah. You have to be vaccinated to get in, and,
right?
And then it's just normal, Yeah.
Right, and if you get vaccinated, you can do this too.
Right?
Did you have to be vaccinated?
Yeah.
To go in?
No, I mean,
because I think only 75% of Congress or something is vaccinated.
Yeah, but then they just weren't invited,
Yeah.
But it was a solid speech, and it was one of the features, as I think it actually would have. It wasn't like a short speech. It would have been longer.
No.
It would have been longer if it had been packed, though, because the applause was
probably would have broken Clinton's record. I think he was second to Clinton, and you're right. It was
he can talk a lot. He
can talk a lot.
Yeah, I remember. I was at a memorial service for Sandy Berger, and then Vice President Biden gave a talk. And boy, I'll tell you, like there were a lot of speakers, President Clinton, many other speakers, and Joe can talk.
Joe can go. Joe can go. It's true.
All right, hey, let's come back after the break, and we had the FOMC this week, and another presser by Jay Powell. You're listening to the Macrocast.
Every 2 weeks, HPS measures U.S. adults' feelings and expectations for the economy. The Civic Science Economic Sentiment Index, powered by HPS, accurately measures movements in overall national economic sentiment and provides a more sophisticated alternative to existing economic sentiment indices. To learn more, contact us through HamiltonPlaceStrategies.com.
All right, back on the Macrocast. Hey guys, we had the Chairman Powell's presser, which I had to go back and listen to because I had somebody scheduled a call during that time. I couldn't even actually listen to the presser, but it all looked pretty routine again. And then when I went back and listened to it, I was like, yeah, it was pretty routine. But there are like, we're getting closer to these things becoming a little bit more adventurous, aren't we, John?
Yeah, I think that's right. Once again, Chair Powell and company came in with their equilibrium between economic optimism and, in fact, growing economic optimism and upside on their inflation outlooks. And on the other hand, commitment redoubled to the ultra accommodative monetary policy settings that they've got right now. And this has been a challenging balance to strike, but it seems like the past month markets the Fed has really gotten through to markets. We've seen the volatility in treasuries come down, abate pretty substantially. The market-based gauges of inflation expectations, which are the tips break-evens, 5s and 10s, are they're at or near multi-year highs. But, they haven't really been roaring upward. The trend is much flatter now on those particular gauges, and they're not at levels that are particularly challenging. And this is something that Fed speakers have said as well. When you have 10-year break evens that are, as we speak, sort of 2.4 and 5-year 2.6. Those are levels that aren't in outright defiance of the Fed. They're not saying that the Fed's going to be wildly missing its targets. Those are kind of within their 2% average inflation over time target, given how long we've spent below 2%. So it's all kind of, everybody's happy to continue with the guidance as is. The Fed hasn't moved their interest rate guidance. The last meeting we saw that. The median expectation is for the first rate hike to be in 2024, although it's incrementally crept forward. Futures markets don't agree. They're putting rate hikes really starting really in a year before the Fed is saying that. But a lot of the intrigue is really around the taper of the quantitative easing program, the asset purchase program. The guidance on that is a lot squishier, as we've said. it's substantial further progress toward the goals of full employment and 2% inflation targeting, which the Fed says is not, that they don't see current conditions as representing that substantial progress, and they need to see more. And they think that that will take some time. And that sometime could be July, or it could be next July. There's really not that much meat on the bones of that kind of guidance. And there's a lot of speculation that the Fed will use their Jackson Hole retreat, whether it's virtual or in person this year, as
Tony, are they going to be able to go?
Announcement of a taper.
We'll see. I mean, I think they can, and should.
It just makes it a much more powerful event.
It really does.
Go do hikes together and things like that, rather than just a virtual event.
There's no virtual trout fishing.
No,
that's not possible.
Yeah, I hope it's in person this year. It is fun to see the Fed officials striking sort of an unconvincing posture in the great outdoors with like creases in their new blue jeans.
Yeah, the shots are stunning though. So,
the backdrop is gorgeous.
Yeah, backdrop is gorgeous. Yeah, it's. I hope they can. We'll see. I mean, it's the Kansas City Fed who makes that decision. It's their.
Yeah, but I mean, it's by the summer where New York is opening July 1st, so you'd have to imagine Jackson Hole. Jackson Hole is already open.
You would think so, and that is the crowd that would go to that would attend Jackson Hole certainly are the types who would get vaccinated.
Yeah, they're probably already vaccinated.
Yeah. The challenge, guys, as is that you're putting off this you're putting off the discussion. I think, John, you noted in one of your morning notes the sort of the reality on communicating on this is just really difficult. I mean, where the chairman is saying, we will give you a lot of lead time. We will signal very early before we're going to do this in order to prevent this sort of the taper tantrum that we saw. I mean, are they too worried about that? I mean, because as I think you noted, the minute Powell says it's not time to talk about the time to, whatever the way you put it, but the minute you start saying, if you announce that now is the time to talk about the time,
you just did it.
You get the taper tantrum then, right?
Yeah, market is going to start pricing it in, right? At that moment.
Yes, talking about the taper, you might as well taper. I mean, talking about the taper, right? talking about the taper is effectively tapering.
The minute you change
that's a tightening of policy.
Yeah.
And if you don't want to tighten policy, you don't talk about tapering.
Exactly. Yeah.
So when you're ready, so they don't actually have to taper to tighten policy. When they're ready to tighten policy, that's the time to talk about tapering.
Yep. That's the way we see it. And there's a lot of the markets are going to be debating this over the summer to the extent that the Fed doesn't have the wherewithal to give clear guidance on their quantitative easing and the timing of the taper over the summer. If they don't provide something by the June meeting that pushes it further out, there's going to be an enormous amount of speculation all summer. The growth numbers are almost certain to be very strong, and inflation rates are going to be high, and some distortions and supply bottlenecks, whether it's transitory or not. The market is going to be playing guessing games all summer with this. And to some extent, if the market does some of the tightening for the Fed, then the Fed is maybe on the balance less needful of tightening themselves. And so you can have that interplay, but that's a little bit of a treacherous game for the Fed to play. More communication is better. If they really think that the likelihood is that they're not going to start talking about tapering until the end of this year, then that's the kind of signal that would give the markets a little more clarity on the time frame, which is it's not time to taper, and we don't think it's going to be time to even talk about tapering until the end of the year. So just back off.
Yeah,
that would be a pretty strong signal. I'm not sure that the Fed is really ready to give that kind of signal yet.
We saw, I think, Chicago PMI just, is out this morning. It's up, well beyond expectations. GDP came out this week, which was, right on expectations. I think, right, we're expecting around 6.5. It was 6.4. We'll know what the real number is in further updates. And but we also got not great news from Europe also. Where Europe looks like they're back in a recession. The U.S. and China are the only games in town. Well, any town, I guess. All the towns on the planet. It's the game on the planet is U.S. and China right now, and they seem to be supporting each other. Actually, demand in the United States is supporting growth in China as well, isn't it?
Oh yeah, we saw really huge import numbers, very strong. It was a very large trade deficit, and that has weakened the dollar a little bit this week. The dollar is down kind of at 2-month lows, not showing a lot of lift here. But as you say, the divergence between the U.S. growth rates and Europe, it's going to become increasingly stark over the summer, one would expect. And in that situation, that tends to support the dollar versus the euro, and that could firm up the greenback here, which tends to be on a firmer dollar really does take some of the wind out of that inflationary pressure sales. So,
John, can I jump back to the Biden stuff for a second? Powell throughout 2020 did sort of in his own way urge more fiscal spending, really encourage Congress to get involved. And Tony's right, the infrastructure stuff is over several years, but should we expect to kind of hear from him over the summer, urging Congress to do something, or if it looks like things are falling apart, to shift his strategy at all?
I don't know. I think that this is probably more of the realm of sort of the emergency fiscal expenditures that the Fed was talking about when the economy was in real dire straits, and we were in the grips of the COVID crisis, and the Fed was hammering. I think that a lot of the urgency has come out, and the Fed it's easier to weigh in on something like emergency stimulus
right,
than it is to weigh in on a specific policy. I think the Fed would shy away from doing that. Yeah. But it is an interesting.
Is going to get he has to get reappointed. So if he wants to
I was going to ask you guys, that seems to me like a slam dunk, right? Biden re-ups him.
It should be, but the Fed is not.
Blainard is waiting too. Yeah.
Right, she's waiting in the wings. Yeah, that's I was curious.
The Fed is not good at politics, though, and there is peril for them, right? So, they have been talking about this, transitive period of inflation they've been, preparing the field for it, for all the perceptions on it, and it's possible that market participants will have sort of a through cycle view on it, right? Like they're going to believe the Fed, that it's and they're going to look at the same data. They're looking at exactly the same data and come to the same conclusion that that there could be a bubble of inflation, but not actual inflation, sustained, aggregate price increases over time. So they may do that. Politics isn't guided by the same things, right? And politics has a very different time frame. And so if politics is saying, my God, look at prices, look at how incompetent this administration has done. They're eating into your savings, all of this spending, and the Fed is, doing all this damage to the economy and going to, talking about the price of, food on the shelves and whatever, cars and houses and everything. Politics isn't bound by doesn't have to bind itself by the economics of it by saying, like believing that it's temporary. They can just go after and attack the administration and attack Jay Powell and the Fed as well, and force a change, because they're not focused on long run growth. They're focused on the 2022 midterms.
Yeah,
Right.
The fact that the Port of Los Angeles has huge bottlenecks and prices are going up because of that, really monetary policy has no control over that. But if you want to get on, MSNBC or Fox News and complain about higher prices,
Cereal prices,
talking
right?
about wonky supply chain issues is not what the public really cares to hear.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah. Agreed.
Got it.
Let's take a break. We'll come back and get a look ahead here. You're listening to the Macrocast.
Check out HPS Insights, a regular podcast from Hamilton Place Strategies, bringing you the latest on policy debates affecting the business and political communities. Available on the HPS podcast channel on your favorite streaming platforms, including Apple, Spotify, and Google. Tune in to the latest episodes and learn more at hamiltonplacestrategies.com/podcast.
All right, we're back on the Macrocast. Brendan, what do we got next week? It's another big week.
Yes, and I mean we get a whole host of the Bank of England has an interest rate meeting, the Bank of Japan. We also get balance of trade data, but as always, once every 4 weeks we get the non-farm payroll report in the United States, and these numbers are big, but it's kind of hard to necessarily tell exactly what they're going to be. I know you guys have that ESI reading. How's that been tracking?
We've seen excitement and confidence in the job market just going bananas the last month. 2 weeks ago, we hit a record high from 2018. And then just this week, we hit the highest confidence level in the history of the ESI. And Tony, you may know better. I think we're 8 or 9 years into this reading now with our friends over at Civic Science. So we are just seeing really kind of off the charts optimism and confidence in the job market.
Yeah, so I mean, I think the consensus is looking for around a million, which was similar to the previous month. But I also think these next couple months, like we could have like a 5 million in, maybe not 5 million, but like a 3 million in July or August. I don't think we're just going to slowly go up. Especially as the economy reopens quicker, we could have just some monster numbers.
Were you disappointed in the sort of smallish reduction in initial claims yesterday?
I would have expected more.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, so they do also release the pandemic unemployment assistance numbers. Those have been slowly coming down, but we're still 200,000 people are receiving that. So when you combine the both, we're still talking about 750,000 people or so that are getting some sort of initial jobless claims. So I wonder how much that is slowing down the rehiring, that you can still get extended unemployment benefits. And that doesn't go, that goes until into September.
I was going to ask, that's till September. So
yeah, on earnings
we have a
calls,
few people looking for a summer of George, just in.
Yeah, no, I think that could be an issue, and that's a slightly concern. And on earnings calls, that's been one of the biggest complaints. And also when you see in the purchasing managers surveys, that's bottlenecks and the inability to hire people has been one of the biggest constraints on productivity and activity.
So. I mean, that's obviously going to be a hugely important number for us to, figure out momentum. We want to see continued momentum there and give us a better sense of what's happening in the summer. It's. Do you think that those, I'm assuming another blowout number and another reduction in the rate of the unemployment rate. Do you think that makes the politics around the infrastructure bill and the family bill more difficult? I mean, if the economy is already rip roaring, does it change the politics around those bills? I mean, Brian, what do you think?
Yeah, to some degree, it will inevitably, right? I do think we'll probably still have a pretty big hole in terms of getting back to where we were pre-COVID on jobs. And we're also seeing, a very different kind of recovery. A lot of women in the workforce are still not coming back. They're still facing challenges with childcare, which will certainly benefit the Democrats' messaging on the families plan, especially. But yeah, I think, a couple quarters, and it's partly why I think Democrats want to really rush this, and they'd love to be done before August, because you're going to have a couple quarters of big growth, big job numbers, where the momentum, I said at the beginning, right? Never let a good crisis go to waste.
Yeah.
The crisis could be over in July.
Because September, we know kids are going back to school. So the 2 million women that have to leave to take care of their kids are going to be back at school.
Right.
Yeah, for sure. I mean,
you've got momentum now, I think. And I believe Pelosi, when she says she wants it done by July 4th, if I was a Chuck Schumer advisor, I'd be saying we can't go into the August recess without this bill done.
I think there's going to be there's still going to be sustained push for it, regardless of regardless of what the economy is looking like. And we should be clear, there's still a strata of workers who went through a very difficult time, and they're still going to be waiting for their sectors to come back, even if aggregate numbers are trending in the right direction. So,
and there's still an infrastructure need. I mean, this is a 10-year plus need, and I was actually surprised. I won't take too long on this. I thought Biden would go heavier on the China part of this in his speech. He touched on it a little.
That's so
but in terms of competition, in terms of kind of where we want the economy to be and to look like in the next 10 years, infrastructure is a big part of that. That's obviously always a little harder to sell. It's less urgency politically, but I think it's still a big point and a big need.
No doubt. It's been an eternal need, an eternal issue. I mean, I don't even know what it's going to be like, because I feel like we've been at this for 15 years, I don't know what it's going to be like to have, the infrastructure bill done.
I think one of the first things I worked on was a Dodd-Hagel infrastructure bank, and we're still here.
All right, guys. Well, I'm looking forward to next week. We get into non-farm payrolls, Jobs Day, always a big day on Macrocast. Have a terrific weekend.
Thank you for listening to the HPS Macrocast. Please remember to subscribe, rate, and share.